The Pokémon world, a place full of beautiful and amazing creatures, and even though it's a very amazing world, it still has some dark features. In that place you can catch and grow alongside Pokémon, go through challenges, or just live a normal life. But one key part of the whole franchise, either being it the games or the anime, is to catch Pokemon, and at first glance, catching Pokemon seems rather innocent. But if you think a bit about it, it kinda looks like you as the player or any other character catching Pokemon in the Pokemon world are literally kidnapping Pokemon from their families, from their habitats, and taking their possibility of having a normal life in the wild. Even some people say that as a joke. Most of the times, though, that you do go around and steal Pokemon from their habitat, but even though it's said as a joke, playing the game, especially, can make you feel like that, since your goal is to catch all Pokemon. But there is more nuance and there is a little bit of depth when it comes to this aspect of the Pokemon games. Hi, I'm Esso, I really like Pokemon, I do Nuzlocke challenges, Pokemon content here, and this is my first video with a Pokemon theory, so leave a like and subscribe if you enjoy it, and let's keep going. The first thing I would like to notice was that some Pokemon can actually leave their Pokeballs, so you're not really constraining them, you're not really obligating them, forcing Pokemon to stay in Pokeballs. Some cool examples are Misty's Psyduck and Brock's Krogunk, that they leave the Pokeball to perform various actions, mostly in the anime being comic relief. For example, Krogunk stabbing Brock because he's being too cringe while flirting. And then on the opposite side of this coin, we have bad guys, bad characters using specific types of Pokeball that they do enforce and obligate Pokemon to stay in there, just as the case is the Pokemon movie Forever. The bad guy uses this weird purple Pokeball to forcefully contain Pokemon. So this case tells us that Pokemon are not forced by normal Pokeballs to stay in the Pokeball. For example, the Master Ball will always result in a catch, but it doesn't mean the Pokemon is imprisoned forever inside the Master Ball. This leads me to the next point, which is Pokemon choose to stay in the Pokeballs. Or, in another perspective, they are too gullible or too afraid of their trainer to leave the Pokeball, but there is a choice. And for an example, Ash's Pikachu doesn't even like to be in a Pokeball. There is a scene where he's repeatedly rejecting the Pokeball that Ash is throwing at it. So once again, I don't think Pokeballs forcibly take Pokemon away of their habitats. There can also be the case that the Pokemon feels some sort of debt towards their trainer, so they decide to stay alongside them even though they are in a toxic relationship. And my point here is that catching Pokemon, it's all about the bond and the connection between Pokemon and trainer. In the most recent Pokemon game, Pokemon Legends EA, there is an NPC that states Pokemon only allow themselves to be caught by trainers that they seem worthy. Now, if you think about it, imagine an Oddish in the forest, its standards wouldn't be very high, wouldn't it? So a kid will be able to catch an Oddish if they just vibe and chill together. On the other side, a legendary Pokemon will not let you catch it unless you show your value and your power towards them. And although I think this is true, in the games it's different, because you, as a kid, basically can catch every single Pokemon in the world if you want to. Not just every single species, you can just go and catch every single Pokemon that you encounter if they don't run away from the Pokeball. But I like to see this as a special occasion, as a differentiation from the rule, because in the games you are this special character. Think about it, you are a 10, 12, maybe 14-year-old kid at max, defeating adults, going through very challenging gym challenges, going through the Elite Four, Victory Road, fighting evil organizations that want to change, destroy, or control the world. So in the Pokemon games, your character is special, and it's many times stated that the Pokemon character, you in the games, have a special connection with Pokemon. Thus, it's easier for Pokemon to recognize your character as worthy or reliable or just interesting, because I think that's also interesting is to sometimes Pokemon just find the idea of traveling with a trainer interesting. Also, usually gym leaders important or semi-important characters, as well as some NPCs, all have partner Pokemon fitting their personality or themes. And those characters could have stronger teams in the games, considering the Pokemon available in the region slash games where those characters were introduced. However, they sometimes show with teams that you consider to be really weak because they can't just go and catch the best Pokemon. They just can choose the best Pokemon available to them because it's more the Pokemon who chooses them as well. This is another point proving that the connection between Pokemon and trainer is the important factor here, and you just can't go. Imagine if you live in the Pokemon world, you couldn't just go outside and throw Pokeball at every single Pokemon and catch them. It's more like they allowing you to catch them. Also, when it comes about Pokeballs and catching Pokemon, we have to talk about Team Plasma. I'll do a separate video talking about them because I think they are the most interesting evil team, even though the whole organization was being manipulated by one character in the shadows. But they do make good points when you play through the game. Do Pokemon benefit from being with trainers? Do trainers benefit from being with Pokemon? And the answer is an objectively yes, unless a person is really bad to their Pokemon, then it's no. But in general, trainers, people are good towards Pokemon. Thank you to our character in Pokemon Legends Arceus, helping to initiate the process of people coming closer together in the Sui region, for an example. And that's just an example. In other regions, the same happened as well in different periods of time. So there was a process. But in the present Pokemon games, people love Pokemon. People like to spend time with Pokemon, and Pokemon like to spend time with people. More than that, Pokemon kinda subconsciously know that they can grow with trainers. And that's very true in the games, for an example, where you can find Pokemon that are high leveled, but they're not as strong because they don't have the EVs, or they just have random moves that don't really benefit their typing or their physical or special focus when it comes to attacking or defending. However, if that Pokemon was caught by a trainer, it would have better EVs and it would have better moves, and there was a trainer helping the Pokemon battle to achieve victory in a more efficient and consistent way. So Pokemons extremely benefit from being with trainer, not just because they can grow, and also they can receive love, protection, shelter, and experience a life that they wouldn't experience in the wild because now they're in the world of humans and trainers and vice versa. People also grow with Pokemons in a more emotional, subconscious way, and they can experience a more wild and natural aspect of the world than just instead being into the rules and social etiquette of the human world. So to conclude this first part of the video, my answer is no. Pokeballs do not enslave Pokemon. You cannot, in the Pokemon world, an average person cannot kidnap Pokemon. So that even like there are many videos or shorts where it's like a day in the Pokemon world and it's just a person just catching a bunch of Pokemon, stealing them from their families. And that is just not true. Even the anime, we see a lot of times that Ash, for example, he doesn't have a huge team of Pokemon in any specific region. Of course, in the time of his latest adventure, he had a big selection of Pokemon because he just went through numerous regions to collect all those Pokemon. And sometimes I wanted, growing up watching the show, Ash to catch a specific Pokemon. I thought it would be cool, but they didn't develop a connection. Now, there is the case that the connection is not very obvious, right? Sometimes Ash, if I'm not mistaken, he just literally throws a Pokeball and catches a Pokemon. But that's where the spiritual side, quote unquote, here comes into play, and this connects us to the second part of this video, which is understanding the nature of Pokemon. So in that case, imagine Ash, or just a random trainer, just throws a Pokeball into a Pokemon. There is no connection, there is no event, there is no exchange of values. Sometimes the Pokemon doesn't even see the trainer, they're just facing one direction, the trainer is behind them, the trainer throws the Pokeball, and that's GG. So that happens to be an energetical, spiritual match. So the Pokemon and the trainer matched subconsciously, mentally, emotionally, in any other way that it's not that did not require physical contact, but According to this theory or perspective of the Pokemon world, there was a contact. There is also the case that sometimes Pokemon they grow to love their trainers. At first, they kind of mad, they kind of rebellious, like Ash's Pikachu for an example, but slowly but surely they grow up to love their trainer. So that's another point that Pokemon subconsciously, or the trainer subconsciously, or just in a non-logical aware way, were aware that they were a good match. And then, just to clear some things out of the way, what in the case of Charmander? Charmander is a big example because he was left by his trainer in the rain, almost being deleted of the Pokemon server, if you know what I'm saying, but he stayed there. He didn't run away. He could have run away. His trainer left him behind, but he was still there waiting for his trainer. That trainer was a bad trainer. So how did Charmander chose to be with that trainer? Well, like I said, it's not really logical. In some cases, it's more subconscious. It's more like vibes based. True. And then when you look, and Charmander is a perfect example because when you look at that whole situation, Charmander was really gullible. Even though his trainer was mean to him, Charmander had enough love to forgive his trainer and keep loving him and wait for him to come back. So there was a connection. Charmander was a learning lesson to that trainer to love and be more open to Pokemon, and that trainer was a learning lesson to Charmander, so Charmander learned that not people are all that loving like Charmander itself was. Now, let's understand the nature of Pokemon, and also a very important case for this theory, which is the Voltorb case. So, Pokemon, right? Pokemon are pocket monsters, creatures that live in the Pokemon world. And if you are aware of the Pokemon mythology, you know that all Pokemon come from Mew. They are descendants from Mew. But that's in the Pokemon world. The Pokemon world, of course, was created by somebody, by a group of people working on an idea together. And in my perspective, I've seen this before, but I can't guarantee you that this is right information I'm about to say. I can give you any sources as well, but I'm pretty sure that Pokemon were inspired in yokais as well. And they were also inspired in just real life animals, of course, but also they were inspired in yokai. And yokai are basically spiritual entities, gods, on the spiritual religion system of Japan, Shintoism. I don't know if they are exclusive to Shintoism or more spread across different cultures in Japan, but they are a thing in Japan, and they basically these creatures that can influence reality, or they're just chilling, being themselves with their own characteristics, personality, and traits, right? And this is special, and Pokemon being inspired by yokai is especially relevant when we think about non-natural Pokemon like objects or even ghost types or dark types or any spiritual, mischievous, or evil Pokemon. And this is important because of a segment of this video that we're going to explore a little bit after we realize that Pokemon are energetical slash spiritual beings. And that's where it all connects to the inspiration from yokai. And how so are Pokemon energetical slash spiritual beings? So Pokemon can evolve and mega evolve. When they evolve or mega evolve, they release a huge amount of energy. Also, Pokemon can use, control, or create elements fire, water, earth, wind. Some Pokemon can even control emotions, minds, illusions, light, space, and time, antimatter, and also plasma. I'm looking at you, ancient dragon from Unova. So Pokemon are connected to the energetical nature of the world. Pokemon are energetical beings. And if we can go that route, since everything in the world is light, everything in the world is energy, people in the Pokemon world will also be energetical beings, but more consolidated, less volatile. You know what I'm saying? But the point is that Pokemon are energetical beings. And why is that important? Well, have you ever seen a Pokeball catch a Pokemon or call it back? It's literally a laser or a beam of light that then touches the Pokemon, and the Pokemon loses its shape. It just becomes a part of that beam and then goes into the Pokeball. And we've seen in multiple instances Pokeballs open and they have like these reflectors inside, so it gives the sense that they were reflecting that laser inside to keep the Pokemon in there. And once again, why is this all important? Because of sealing techniques and the origin of Pokeballs. Because Pokeballs didn't start in the modern age of the Pokemon world. We know so far, in official terms, the oldest Pokeball that we know in the games are from Isui, that you can make with fruits, and then Kurt in Johto can also use the acorns or the apricorns to build Pokeballs as well. But in the anime, I don't know if it was in the movie or in anime, there is this rock like Pokeball, and there's this gigantic rock Pokeball that was meant to catch a gigantic Claydol. And now we had some leaks for the next Legends game, which will be Legends Galar, and there is this huge Pokeball made of rock, which are supposed to be the first Dynamax Pokeballs that will allow people to catch Dynamax Pokemon. But how does that work? You can't even move those rocks, right? You can throw them. And how would rocks capture Pokemon? How modern Pokeballs catch Pokemon? It's all about sealing techniques inspired also from Japanese culture. Throughout the Shintoism and perhaps other Japanese cultures, there is the art, the technique, the culture of sealing spirits in rocks, in straw, in paper, in literal seal, in a writing format as well. If you watch Naruto, there is a bunch of examples about sealing jutsu. Even summoning jutsu is reversing sealing jutsu. You like releasing something, right? So sealing is a relevant part of Japanese culture. And that's exactly the inspiration, I believe, for the ability to catch Pokemon. Basically, Pokeballs back in the day, because now it makes more sense because technology, but back in the day, or the original Pokeballs didn't really make a lot of sense because they were not technological. So if they weren't technological, they had to be magical, quote unquote, or spiritual. But in the end of the day, it's a bit more scientifically that because it's just containing energy. Just sealing a yokai, sealing a spirit, sealing a god, sealing an energetic being inside of rocks in the first place, and then wood or natural fruit, plant-based materials. And that works because in a lot of Japanese spiritual culture, spirits and gods, they live everywhere. They live in the trees, they live in the water, they live in the ground, they live in the mountains, in the air, in objects. So it would make sense for you to be able to seal a god, a being, inside of something that can already be inhabited by a spirit or a celestial entity. The thing is, Pokeballs are specific to Pokemon, not just a spirit, not just a god. They are designed to contain a specific type of creature called Pokemon. But I still think it's all about sealing, it's all about transforming Pokemon into a more volatile energetical state and then making sure it's like reflected inside that object or contained. But once again, the Pokemon then have the will to leave that container because that's all about the connection, spiritual, emotional, mental connection between trainer and Pokemon, being Pokeballs only the device. And once again, like the Master Ball example, maybe we're gonna see this new Gigantamax Pokeball that are huge boulders. At first, they can force the capture, but they cannot force the imprisonment. It's two different things. And the Pokemons allow themselves to be captured as well. Now, to finish this video, let's focus on the Voltorb case, because Voltorb looks like a Pokeball, but it's not a Pokeball. And we have Hisuian Voltorb that looks like a Pokeball made out of acorns. Apricorns, always confused about that one, right? But what does that mean? How so? We have the modern Pokeball being represented by a Pokemon, and we have old Pokeballs being represented by a Pokemon as well. How does that work? And this part doesn't really connect with this theory, it's just interesting, so let's get into it. I think it's all about Mew, because I think it was also in Pokemon Legends EA that somebody said that Voltorb came to be at the same time as Pokeball. So it was not Pokeball was made and then Voltorb showed up, or it's not like Voltorb shows up and then people learn how to make Pokeballs. It seems it was at the same time. And I think the answer is Mew. Because first, all Pokemon came from Mew, and Mew is a psychic type Pokemon, so it can be aware of things that cannot be seen. It can hear voices, it can emit voices far away, it can be aware of things that are not that you cannot be aware with your five normal senses. So my theory is that when the idea to create the modern age Pokeballs and the Pokeballs in Isui was conceived in a human mind or was shared in a human group, there was a Mew nearby or just a Mew that got aware of that idea and then transformed its DNA into Voltorb and created that whole line of Pokemon. And that's going to be everything for today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and the final answer is that no, Pokeballs cannot imprison Pokemon, so people in the Pokemon world do not go out and start kidnapping every single Pokemon. Thank you for watching. I see you on the next one.